Hey everybody, it's Rajesh here.
And Tane here.
Welcome to our podcast, Baskets of Knowledge, Chats with a Difference. In our podcast, we invite guests from around the country and around the world to talk about how they got to where they're at the moment. It's about a journey, it's about an experience, it's about their life. Kia ora koutou, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Baskets of Knowledge. This is episode, I don't know what, because like I said before, we keep forgetting the numbers and you can listen to any order. Again, it's just me today because Tane is away doing some family stuff in Christchurch. I think there's a birthday, which is pretty cool, but he might join us at some point in the podcast. It's been a crazy week for me. Basically, what's happened is in the last week or so, it's been lots of young people are coming back to university, young adults, and lots of questions are being asked about different things. And it just made me reflect about my time at university, but also just life reflection where you think about uncertainty. You know, you think you have a plan and then things come your way and they disrupt those plans dramatically, either because left field, either because somebody has said something or because something has happened in life. And, sometimes we all try to control things in life, but it's okay to, say we can't control things and things will disrupt things. And it's how you react back to that there. And I think that's going to be a theme as well in our podcast today, because life throws things, and as you've heard from all our different podcasts, is a lot of people that have come onto you have said life has thrown up something, and they've had to change things along the way. So instead of hearing a monologue with me, we're going to invite our guest on today. I'm very lucky to know this young adult for the last few years, I think 4 or 5 years now. So it's a privilege to have her on our podcast, and I'm sure we'll go through some amazing stories as we invite Ashleigh Stanners to our podcast. Welcome, Ashleigh, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, it's an honor, really. Thank you.
No, it's an honor for us to have you here. So Ashleigh, for our listeners out there who know nothing about you, do you want to tell our listeners just a bit about who you are at this point in time in your life and where you are at this stage?
Yeah, so my name's Ashleigh. I am originally from Taranaki. I went to Stratford High School when I was in high school, and I've just finished my Bachelor of Science. I graduated in December, studying genetics with a minor in zoology, and I'm currently doing a postgraduate diploma in genomic health and medicine at the University of Otago.
Fantastic. That's and it's so awesome for me to listen to you because all those years ago when I met you at Stratford High School, and you're thinking about what you want to do. If I said to year 13, Ashleigh, hey, in 4 years' time or 5 years' time, you'll be doing a postgrad diploma and maybe looking at a master's, what would you have said to me at that point in time?
Honestly, I probably wouldn't have believed you. I didn't think I was gonna get to that point. For a while, I didn't think I was going to get to my bachelor's. So I think younger me would have probably either not believed you or been completely blown out of the water by knowing where I am now, which is insane.
Isn't that crazy though? Because if you think back to year 13, a lot of year 13s think that at year 13 they have their life all sorted, or they think they have life all sorted. But as you said just before, you had no idea you'd even get your bachelor's at that point in time. So it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, in year 13, I was definitely going into university thinking I knew what I was going to be doing, but I knew for a fact I didn't have it all sorted out. I think there's more hindsight, though. At the time, I was probably like, yeah, I'll just do this and it'll be fine, and, it's 3 years. But life obviously changes a lot.
Yeah, totally. And I love that because hindsight it's so easy for us to sit here and go, hey, this is going to happen, but hindsight is amazing, and none of us have hindsight until we actually live an experience, which is pretty crazy. But let's talk about Ashleigh growing up in Taranaki. So it's quite crazy. A lot of our guests seem to come from Taranaki for some crazy reason. But what was that like for you? Because the reason I talk about that is because Taranaki is a very small community. It's a close-knit region. Stratford is even smaller. So what is it like for you when you were in year 13 and you knew you had to leave to go if you wanted to further your study? How was that decision-making process for you as you got to that stage where you go, actually, I've got to leave my close-knit community to go away?
It was definitely one of the hardest decisions I had to make around that age bracket time. I knew for what I wanted to study, I had to either go to Otago or Auckland, and both of those were terrifying. I mean, Auckland's a huge city coming from a tiny wee place. I mean, my high school had 500 of us, And then Otago being slightly smaller than Auckland, but also the other end of the country. Really exciting to kind of get a new opportunity and meet new people, because I mean, everyone knows everyone where I'm from. But also just absolutely terrifying at the thought of moving either way across the country to go to university to kind of expand my potential. It was a lot of nerves, very, very nervous. Excited, but very nervous.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
a little bit in the context of you were the head girl of your high school, and
Yes.
a lot of people think that, hey, if you're the head student, the confidence is going to be out there because you're the head student. So before we talk about that, let's talk about the day you found out that you were a head student. Was there something you were gunning for? Was it something that was a surprise as
Um,
you heard your name being called at the stage?
so at our school, you have to apply for it.
Yes.
Thankfully, the way we did it when I was there, it's probably changed by now. The students didn't have a say. It was all on staff and the board of trustees and stuff. But we don't find out until January. We found out the day before the school found out, because my principal would come to your house and
Oh
offer you
wow.
a position. And then you kind of have like 12 hours to mentally prepare before 500-600 other people find out, and everyone has mixed reactions on who they think it's going to be. But once I found out the night before, I was really stoked, to be honest. I was really excited. I've been working towards it, but at the same time I was just so nervous because I didn't know how the reaction from everyone else was going to be, because I mean, a lot of people apply for those kind of positions, and it's never going to make everyone happy. So yeah, once again, I think a lot of my stories are probably like super excited, super nervous. But still, I mean, no matter how nervous or anxious I got, I found I'd still applied for a lot of things and still kind of pushed myself into doing it. But yeah, it was, I mean, really exciting for me and for my family, because a couple of my cousins were also head boy at Stratford High prior to me. And we had a long sort of family standing, I guess, at the high school. So it was kind of nice to be able to be part of that as well. Yeah, it was really exciting. At the time, my form teacher told me not to go for head girl, because she's like, if you apply for head girl, you're probably not going to get ducks because you'll be super busy. But yeah, that didn't happen either.
It's pretty crazy, right? Because
Really
at this point in time, you are molded by the people that are around you, and we've heard this many times where teachers have either teachers in the community have either warned some people about doing stuff or have been supporting people, and at that point in time, as a young year 12, I guess, when you're applying, you go, oh man, this is quite daunting, because do I want to be ducks or want to be head student? It's quite daunting, and to hear someone say to you, hey, if you do this, you're not going to do this. Yeah, that's like, oh, that could throw a curveball at you.
It definitely did. For a while, I was debating whether I even applied. And then I think by the time I kind of applied, I was like, oh, I'm probably not going to get it. But I mean, it's not going to hurt to toss like my name into the ring and see how it goes.
Yeah.
I definitely didn't go into it thinking I was even going to be near getting the position. But I also didn't want to waste the opportunity. I mean, if I didn't get it, I didn't get it. But at least I tried. Which is quite often how I do things now. So
And
yeah.
I love that, because I think we'll circle back to that later on at the end of the conversation at some point. I think what you've just said there is, you applied, you're like, no expectation. And I think that's an important thing to raise, that, sometimes we apply for things with an expectation and then we get so disappointed either way. But you applied going, whatever got to lose. I'm saying that now in hindsight, but at that point you might have been a bit different. But hey, but you've applied, you've got nothing to do. What's the worst that could happen? You get a no. The best thing is you get a yes, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
It feels like a long time ago now.
Yeah, well, time flies, like time flies. But how cool is it that in your community, your principal comes to you the day before and says that? I don't think it happens in many communities.
I reckon it was great.
Yeah,
there's nothing worse. I feel like it gives you a little bit of time to sort of be really excited, but also prepare, rather than sort of sitting in assembly and then you just find out with everyone else. it'll be very overwhelming.
Yeah, crazy. So now which is awesome. So tell us about being the highlights about being a head student, and also the challenges that you might have had in that year.
Thankfully this was before COVID existed. So
Yes.
life was pretty normal
Yeah.
in that regard. There's so many highlights. The good definitely outweighed the hard times, but
Yeah.
saying that, there was definitely hard times as well.
Yeah.
My favorite part was, I got to interact with way more of the students at our school, but also other schools and within like the community, charities and all that kind of stuff that you just wouldn't have the contact with otherwise. That was amazing. Like, we got to do a lot of different charity work, and actually getting to connect with the younger students, especially when you're in year 13. I feel like you can kind of end up in a bit of a like NCAA level 3 bubble. So yeah, I think that was probably one of my favorite parts, just actually getting to know everyone at my school and being able to do things with students that you normally just kind of, everyone sort of sticks to their own age groups. That was definitely one of my favorites, and getting to meet other people in my sort of similar position from other schools as well. Getting to meet the other head students and stuff kind of gives you a bit more clarity on not just your position, but also like how you stand, and like the way things could be and how you can improve. Which is really nice, especially when you're in such a small place, when you actually get to meet other people in similar positions from around, even Taranaki alone, there's quite a few schools. So that was definitely a highlight, getting to actually get outside perspectives on
Yep.
potential things you could change or do. Was amazing. But on the flip side, the social aspect definitely comes into it. It is really busy. You do end up doing some very long days sometimes after school and stuff. And also, you're not going to please everyone, is something I definitely found in that year. Some people are just not going to like your decisions or you as a person or anything like that, which is confronting at the start, because usually you can kind of, if people don't like you or you don't get along, which happens, you're not going to avoid it. Usually you can kind of avoid it, but when you're in that position, you can't avoid any sort of conflict and stuff. It's just part of it. So it took me a while to get used to that. More so, I was a severe trying to please everybody, and that burnt me out as well. So coming to that realization where you can do the best you can, and no matter what, not everyone's going to like it, is definitely one of the hardest things I found that year, I think. But I learned a lot from it.
And I think that's like you said before, you had amazing opportunities to meet lots of people in the same capacity as you, but also learn about yourself. And I like what you said. It's about actually working with the younger students, because when I think about myself when I was at my final year of high school, I just focused on me. I don't really care about the Form 1s. Who cares about them, because it's quite grounding to go, actually, I was once there, let me try and see how I can help them. But the challenge is, I think that the one challenge that you really mentioned, which I think is universal across whether you're a young person or an adult, is the whole realizing that you can't please everybody. And a lot of us think that we have to try and appease everybody, and and we end up doing nothing. You end up just crippling yourself, because you try and please everybody, and then when one person is not pleased, so you might have pleased 99 people, but the one that you don't please, you focus all energies on there, and then you just feel like you failed in whatever you're doing, which is pretty tough. Yeah, it's pretty tough. And that happens in all aspects of life, not just as a head student, but in all aspects of life. And whether it's head student, whether it's at university, or whether it's the sporting game or whatever, it's a pretty confronting thing that you would have gone through. And you mentioned one key word, which I think is going to segue into the next part of the conversation. You mentioned burnout, and I'm very lucky to have known you for a while, and I know that burnout and mental health has been something that's been a big part of your life, or that part of your life. And when did you start feeling that, hey, I needed to address my mental health? When was that affecting your life because it's hard to tell when this happens, right? You just think life is normal, and how does it happen? How did it happen for you?
So yeah, I mental health wise I thought I was completely fine all the way up until about April of year 11, so just started NCA, all that kind of stuff. And I had a full-blown severe panic attack out of nowhere, and I ended up in hospital because obviously no idea what was going on, hyperventilating, your heart rate's through the roof. They're like, something medically is wrong. And that was kind of my first and the start of a very long journey with anxiety. Yeah, just completely out of the blue. Like, I thought everything was all good. Like, yeah, school's stressful and friend groups change and all that kind of stuff, but it's pretty normal. But and once again, in hindsight, I've found that I had a lot of bottled up emotions and fears and stresses that I not so much didn't want to acknowledge, but I didn't even know were kind of occupying my brain. So year 11 was a really big turning point for me. I went through a long period of, I was pretty much having a panic attack every day. Some of them were quite long. For a while, I couldn't last a day at school, and then kind of spread out slowly over time. But it took a long time to kind of figure out what was going on. They thought there was something wrong with my heart. They were like, maybe she's having something medically, like physically wrong. So once we finally got like the anxiety diagnosis, I think a lot changed then too. I was very lucky to be able to go to therapy, and still do, because life does not stop. Not as frequently anymore, but it was a really big point in my life where I struggled immensely. I could barely be at school, and then the social impact that comes with that, because I mean, when you're like 15, 16, a lot of people don't understand what's going on. Some people assumed I was making it up for attention. Some people were like, she's just crazy. Something's like, she's snapped. Something's gone wrong. Yeah, it was a really big moment in my life. Probably the most life-changing event I've had, where I just completely broke down. I like got to the point I couldn't really leave my room. I couldn't leave the house without having severe anxiety, like panic attacks, shaking, the whole lot. Which is confronting to even think about now, and I've been dealing with this for years. But looking back, it was pretty bad. And sometimes I don't think I've gotten any better. And then you look back and it is so different.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a really big changing point, and it also just coincided with my NCA level 1s, which wasn't ideal. But I feel like it does make a lot of sense. That's kind of why, well, it wasn't why, but I think it was just the final thing that kind of made me have not so much a mental break, but just like it really all came together and imploded essentially. Which was hard because I actually really enjoyed school. I really liked my classes and learning stuff. And it definitely made things really hard socially. I mean, general anxiety sucks. General anxiety and social anxiety, when like you feel like everyone's judging you or no one wants to be around you or likes you or anything. You can get really in your own head about it. And I did for a long time. And at such a young age where it's kind of like we are forming semi-adult opinions and everything else. It's yeah, a lot of people just don't understand. Even my parents took a while to try and like get their heads around it, because I mean, it's not something that anyone really learns about until it happens. But yeah, it was a very challenging time of my life. Probably the hardest year I've been through, and that's saying something.
Yeah, I appreciate you. Thank you for sharing that there, because you, as we spoke about that, you can see the emotions that came up as you reflected back on that there. But I really liked what you said there, and I think this is important, as you said, that it wasn't a bottling up emotions, but it was actually an awareness of things that you didn't know that you had. And I think that's important, because I think a lot of people don't, you feel like, oh, I should have known these things, but it's lack of awareness, because you don't think about it. Like you said, everything was going tickety-boo for you. but you had no
Yeah.
awareness. You have no awareness of all the other stuff that happens in your life. And that's with all of us. We don't know what's happening. And then when things just break, it's the awareness piece that actually where things can start changing. And I think that was a really key thing that you said, is that, hey, it wasn't I was bottling stuff. It just happened, and I became aware of these things here, which is really profound. Because as you go forward now, and I'm guessing through your treatment and through your therapy chats, it's all about the awareness piece that comes through quite a bit. That's important for us to realize. But I'm going to ask you a question about, you said a key word. You said you were lucky to go to therapy. Was that an easy decision for you and your family to make? Because around the stigma around, it's changed a little bit right now, but you came from a small community, very small community where it's a farming community. A lot of, it's a very, very different world out there. And what is that like for you and your family to address?
I think within my household, I mean, they were seeing the full effect of how severe things were, and to this day I still feel awful for having put them through that. And I think that's something, although I've been working on it for years, I don't think it's something that's going to go away.
Yep.
But I think just because they were exposed to the full extent of how severe my mental health was declining, they were like, we'll try anything if it's got a potential to work. And my GP was really happy for me to go with that route rather than the medication route. But I mean, I'm totally pro going for whatever works for you. This is just what worked for me. I find there's no shame in it, but at the start it was definitely very confronting. I didn't really tell anyone, like none of my friends knew. Especially coming from such a rural place, a lot of it is just the kind of suck it up, what's going on. I was quite lucky in the way that my extended family, I'm the youngest of all my cousins, so although they are older than me, I think they're sort of in the generation where that kind of stuff's not so like hush hush. But it did take some of my family members longer than others to kind of not so much come around, but to understand what was happening. They just didn't get why it was happening, which is totally a generational and regional thing, I think, as well. They were just like, why is this happening? Why can't you just stop it? Like, because it's not that black and white. But I was very, very lucky to have such a great supportive family. But on the flip side, socially, it was the complete opposite. I feel like I lost a lot of friends because they just didn't know what was going on. And then when you're in such small groups as well, people tend to just follow other people's opinions, which happens a lot. I was very lucky that the friends that kind of stuck by me, I'm still super close with now. And I'm really, really thankful for them because it was a really hard time. But socially was a bit different. Also, I think at an age where a lot of people just don't understand a lot of it as well. Became quite isolated for a while, which actually doesn't help. But I was lucky to have such a supportive family, because at least then the social aspect didn't hurt as much.
Totally.
And I guess in the reverse, it would have been the same if my friends were super supportive, but my parents were kind of iffy about it. At least you had some support. But it was definitely a tough time at high school from then on, pretty much for the next 3 years. Dealing with that and everything else that comes with life.
I'm gonna. I mean, we can dive into that deeper, but I'm gonna fast forward a little bit and go. So year 11, you go. This happens, right? And then you become head student.
Yes.
Let's talk about that, because this is, you just said, hey, socially isolated, talking to people, what's going on here, and then head student. So that journey is pretty remarkable, right? If you think of it that way, right? So and what is that like, as you reflect back even today, as you think about that, you said the next 3 years were pretty challenging, and today as you reflect back, what does that show you about yourself? What did you learn about yourself in that, or the people around you, or the therapy sessions you did? What did that show you?
Yeah, I mean, socially throughout, I struggled from that point with people my own age, but I was really, I keep saying lucky, but I feel like I'm genuinely lucky that I had a really good relationship with a lot of my teachers. They were super supportive of a lot of my decisions, and I guess they saw more potential in me than I saw in myself. They believed in me a lot more than I did. A lot of the adults in my life, not just the teachers, but family members and stuff as well. Because I went from I couldn't sit in a class for an hour without fidgeting or freaking out or having to leave, to literally standing on stage in front of 500 people every week, in the pretty much the eye of everyone, where they watch your every move. I applied for that position still having panic attacks, not daily, but they were not gone. And I knew I was putting myself into a position where I would find it hard for a little bit, until I more so applied to prove to myself that I could do it, more than anything else, because I was like, if I don't do it now, this is the one chance I have. And it was kind of just to test myself in a way on how much I'd grown, because I mean, when you're just living it, you don't think you've gotten any better. To this day, I still think sometimes, oh my God, I'm as bad as I was when it all started. But looking back, I've made a lot of progress, and that's due to the people I've surrounded myself with. 100%. But I think it was to getting from that point in year 11 to that point at the start of year 13 was 100% due to the support that I had around me. And they believed in me a lot more than I believed in myself. My self-confidence was through the floor. I had pretty much none. I didn't think, I had all these hopes and dreams that I didn't think I'd ever be able to achieve because of my anxiety. And I think something just flipped a switch in there somewhere, where I was like, if I apply and get a no, it's fine. It's not. I was more scared about getting the yes, actually.
Yep.
When I applied, I was like, if they tell me no, I mean, I tried and I don't have to do all this really scary stuff. If I get a yes, that means I actually have to face a lot of my anxieties and fears, that I never used to have.
Yep.
Before everything changed. I used to be completely fine. So yeah, it was throwing myself in the deep end a little bit, but it was a big part of my healing journey, I think.
And I really want to thank you for sharing that, because I think the key thing there is for you just emphasizing the fact that you had the support there to get you through. It wasn't a lone journey, and I think a lot of times we think we have to be alone and fight whatever we're going through by ourselves. But proximity is power. We hear that all the time. And if you're around people that are good, well, it could have gone the other way. You could have been people that have just said, no, this is terrible. You can't get in your life. This is who you are. Done. But you found people that would, hey, let's get you better. Let's challenge you about those thoughts that you have in your mind. Let's grow you. And as you said before, you feel bad about what you put your parents through, but they're probably your biggest advocates, and they would have supported you the whole way through. And I still remember seeing them at your graduation last year, and how proud they were of you graduating, even though I know you were in a whole different state there because
that's
other things. It's another story.
We'll get there.
We'll get there, exactly. And I was like, oh, and they were really proud of you. So that's really awesome. Let's move away from that space there. Now let's talk about so you arrive in Dunedin. You arrive in Dunedin, and what were you hoping to study at that point in time? Was it?
I actually started, with the degree I finished with. So
fantastic. Who can say that? How many people can say that?
Mostly, anyway. I added a minor, but
that's all right. Yeah.
I started here at Otago in 2020. Signed in, all ready to go for a Bachelor of Science in Genetics. I was the one of two at my hall. There was 400 of us at Arana, and 2 of us were doing genetics. So pretty small group of us in total. But yeah, arrived pretty much all ready to go, and then obviously humongous change. I mean, going from a high school of 500 to living with 400 people was like living with every single person I knew all at once. And even worse, they're all the same age as you.
Yeah.
So that's when a lot of your like self-comparison to other people and stuff sneaks in, because everyone's from completely different backgrounds and you're trying to figure out like where you should be at that age anyway. But then at university is like a whole nother level of trying to figure out who you want to be and that kind of stuff. Absolutely loved my first year, most of it anyway, because after 5 weeks down here, I went home for the first lockdown, and that was for 10 weeks, and that was a huge period of just unknown, which is not great for people with anxiety anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, I went home, and I'm very glad I did, because I wasn't so keen on living with potentially 400 people I didn't know, when this, at the point, very scary disease that no one knew anything about was coming around.
Yeah.
But it was definitely an interesting start to university, because obviously I'd done like a huge like preparation, that I was moving all the way to the other end of the country, away from sort of my entire support system, except for my brother, he's down here, which has been vital, honestly, for me. But yeah, going from pretty much everyone and my entire support system that I knew to being down here with strangers, a lot of preparation goes into that. And then you get down here, you go through the homesickness, next minute you're going back home because university is pretty much online. It was a big time of turmoil, just not knowing what was going on. But yeah, online exams was something.
Yeah, I can imagine. But I think, if we I mean, this is, 2020 was I can use the word crazy in a
It
way,
is,
because
yeah.
it's really hard to describe in any other way apart from the crazy. Like you said before, what we know now versus what we know when COVID arrived. We all thought we were going to die. Basically, if you got it, you were
Pretty
dead.
much,
Essentially,
yeah.
it was. So you can understand, why I need to go home to be around people that I'm around, and care, and my support structures. And so you do that there, and you get through the year. We all get through the year somehow. And let's talk about the study aspect. So genetics, why genetics? What that's so niche and so specific. Why did you choose that? Because the reason I asked that question is because you started with it and you finished with it. And a lot of people start with a program like genetics, which is very, very niche, and they realize actually this is not what I thought it was going to be, and they change their mind along the way.
It's actually a little bit of a funny story. So the original way that it kind of came into my life was in year 10. You do one standard on like genetic inheritance. It's not even NCEA yet. It's just something they teach you in year 10. And I was like, hey, I really like this. It makes sense to me. I find it really interesting. And then my biology teacher, who I kind of idolized for a long time, was like, you're really good at this. I think you would do really well if you studied this. And I was like, okay.
Wow. And just for context, how old were you? How old is year 10? How
14, 15.
Yeah, if that, probably,
Very
yeah,
young.
very
14,
young,
I
exactly.
think.
Yeah.
And I think that just kind of initial someone being like, you seem to be good at this, I think you should keep going, instead of, because I was quite lucky where most of the things I tried, because I put in a lot of effort, I tended to get a good result.
Yeah.
So having someone actually be like, you seem to not only be good at it, but you're actually enjoying it, I think you should consider this. Not any way was I pushed into it, but that kind of, I think, changed something in my brain somewhere. I was like, oh, I can actually do something I like doing, that I find interesting. Yeah, that's kind of how it all started, which is, some people are like, how'd you get into it? And they expect some really good, like fancy stuff. No, my biology teacher said I was good at it. And I was like, yeah, okay.
Really, and that's all you need, right? And the reason I asked is because I still remember meeting you at high school, and you told me genetics, and I was like, that's very specific. That is
Very niche.
very super specific. And the reason also because you're from a small school, and lots of people from small schools go generic, BCom or health science first year or engineering, or just because they want to get away from. But you were like genetics, and then and every time I saw you, it was always going to be genetics, and I was like, all right, cool.
Every year.
Every year,
Yes.
every year that I've seen you, it's always been genetics, which is really, really cool. So you navigate first year, you navigate the COVID worldness. Now I want to touch base on what is it like. So 400 people living with 400 people. Now you shift focus and you go flatting. What is that like as a young person? The reason why I speak about this is because there's this assumption here that when you finish school, you become an adult all of a sudden. You should know all these things here. Then there's an assumption that you live in a hall, you should know how to flat. Like there's all these assumptions that come into play. And what is that like for you as you go from electricity every day, your food every day, all that kind of stuff there, to actually have to be a real adult. Real.
My first year flat was, well, first year of flatting, my second year of university. I once again was very lucky with who I lived with. So it was myself, another girl who was in her second year as well. And I'd met her in year 13 at a science camp that we did. So I'd known her for a while. And then my other two flatmates were actually, I moved into my brother's old flat because he went on placement. So I moved in with one of his flatmates who was staying there. And she was 2 years older than me. So she had sort of the experience of flatting and kind of had a routine and stuff. And then my other flatmate was actually also 2 years older than me, but we went to high school together.
Oh, crazy.
So like people I knew, but we didn't like ever have anything together. But I think having, especially my flatmate that I lived with at the time, who was like, this is her third year flatting by then, she had like a routine. I think that completely changed the game for me. I wasn't going in with a whole bunch of other second years completely blind to how flatting works. Having that sort of older student who's like, here's like how we used to do things, we can change it, but like it's good to have kind of like this cleaning schedule, and like this is how we'll do the bills and groceries and that kind of stuff. That was a smooth transition for me, I think. But I can definitely see on the other side, like people that have gone into a flat with a whole bunch of second years, they're all trying to figure it out. And saying that, our group was quite good because we we're all studying different things as well. So it's not like we're together 24/7. Like you're on the halls a little bit. Like if your friends are studying the same thing as you go to classes together, you go to meals together. Like, so yeah, it was a very smooth transition, but it's not a very common one that a lot of people experience. Some of my other friends went completely into flatting, and they would be like, we don't know what's going on. People are arguing about how the bills work. Like, how do you tell someone they're having a shower for too long because it's using too much power? That kind of stuff. So, very smooth transition for me. But for some of my friends, I kind of got to watch from the outside what their transition was like. But yeah, my first year flat was amazing, super supportive, because they've all had different life experiences. So like we all had our moments where things were great, and we all had our moments where we were super stressed out and things weren't going so great. Once again, a very supportive group, which was
awesome.
Amazing.
Awesome. I'm going to ask you a question that a couple of people have said in the podcast before that. And you mentioned it as well. In your first year, you live in a hall of residence. Comparison galore. It happens. You're living with lots of young people, basically the same age. It is what happens, and you feel like you have to live a life that is not you. When you shifted from first year living in the halls and you went to second year, did you feel that your identity changed and you could actually realize who you were more versus first year where I guess your year was broken up quite a bit, but you were still trying to live a life that was not really you because you're trying to fit into this mass of randomness, I guess.
Yes, 100%. I went from just trying to fit in, really, with everyone else, to definitely feeling like I could be more so myself, and you realize who you're actually friends with, like because you want to be and not because you're 2 doors down from and you see them every day. Not there's anything wrong with friendship by like proximity, but it definitely made me realize a lot about who I want to be, but also who I want to be around.
Yep.
It was definitely liberating in that sense. I think that's when it kind of clicked in my brain as well. Like you're not in high school anymore. You don't have to fit in with everyone else. Like also people aren't watching your every move. Like no one cares who you are down here. That all kind of happened for me in the first semester of second year, where I went from I have to be perfect all the time, otherwise people are going to talk about it, and like I have to do this and fit in with everyone else, to being like I can be or do pretty much whatever I want. And the people that don't like it don't actually have to be in your life.
Yep.
And that was also really hard. It sounds very profound and easy to do, but at the time it was difficult. Trying to figure out who I was, and also going through all of university, because I don't drink at all. Some people that you think you're friends with have very strong opinions on what you do personally. But I thankfully never felt pressured to go into do anything that I didn't want to do. But it definitely makes you realize what your values are, I think, especially flatting, because you pretty much free reign to do whatever you want. There's no sort of adults around being like, you shouldn't do that.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so really good and very transformative, but it's not an easy transformation.
And I love you said that because, it all sounds easy. It all sounds like it's profound, like, oh, it just happens automatically, but it's not. I mean, I'm sure there were days you were crying. There were days you were like, what the hell am I doing here? There were days like, what is going on here? There were days when you'd be like, I don't like that person. What is like me? It is part of life. It's not like, okay, cool. If people don't like me, they don't like me. That doesn't happen, right? That takes a long journey for you to get to the stage where you can actually do that thing.
I mean, I'm still working on it now. I don't think it's something you ever stop working on, because I mean, as it's human nature for you to want to get along with other people. It's never nice to feel like someone doesn't like being around you. So, but yeah, that was a big kind of switch time. A very hard semester for me. That was actually probably the hardest semester, especially going from 100 level papers to 200 level papers is quite a big step up in itself. And at the time I was like, what am I doing? Why did I do this degree? Like completely questioning everything. Really struggled with a lot of it. And then, with all that, my mental health got really bad again. I went through a period where I was just super anxious, and I was like, I don't know why I'm doing this. Why am I at university? Should I even be here? I thought about dropping out, but then I thought about if I dropped out, like the people and the judgment that would come with that, but also like not passing is not good either. It was a big turmoil time. I went through a really hard point through like the midway in the semester. I took some papers that probably weren't the best papers to do. Struggled with the midterm exams and that kind of stuff, and that adds to your kind of questioning of everything and like, is this who I want to be? But thankfully came out the other side of it. But it happened to me, and I know it's happened to quite a few other people. And a lot of people don't talk about it. But I don't think anyone's ever had a completely smooth run where they haven't questioned their degree or what they're doing in general. Because it does get hard sometimes. Sometimes your papers just aren't the right ones, and you don't know until you're in them.
Because you're choosing based on 3 lines or 4 lines, on a website somewhere, or on a title. Oh, this looks pretty cool, but it's so totally different.
It's like recommended for your degree, and you're like, okay, if it's recommended, it must be.
Which is crazy. And I like what you mentioned there, but I'm gonna touch again. I like touching on things. You mentioned something that's really, really profound, and I want to talk about the fact that you don't drink alcohol. And the reason I want to bring that up is because wherever there's young people, whether it's at university or whether it's in a social setting, or in New Zealand generally, in fact, that alcohol it's like a staple. if you're not drinking alcohol, then there's something wrong with you. Essentially, is what you're made to feel if you are in that situation. What is that like for you navigating, especially navigating university for you? So it doesn't matter what university it is, the fact that you're around young people that are drinking alcohol and you go, I'm not drinking alcohol.
Yeah.
And how easy was it for you as well?
New Zealand has a huge drinking culture, which isn't so great. But I think it's all universities are actually the same. I don't think
Yep.
any are worse than the other. Not that it's even the university's fault. It's just you get a whole bunch of people this age bracket around. They're gonna drink and do things. I actually found it that there was more pressure and peer pressure to do, like, to actually drink and stuff when I was at high school, than when I was at university. Which is really interesting because I've had people that say the complete opposite. I think it totally depends where you come from. But coming from such a rural place, I think it's a big thing. Like that's what people get together to do.
That's right. Yeah. What
Um,
else do you do? What else do you do on the farm, right? Nothing.
yeah, they're like, we're gonna have a bonfire and a couple of beers, and I'm like, I'll come for the fire. But
Yeah.
it definitely is more pressure at high school. I think it was also because people are like, what do you mean? Why not? Like everyone else does. Once again, everyone's trying to fit in. University, I had a little bit of it, but honestly, I found it way easier. A lot of people would just be like, oh, okay. I mean, as long as I was still like going out with them or going to their parties or like, still maintaining like going to these events with them. They didn't care whether I was sober or not. They just wanted me to be there with them to enjoy the experiences. But yeah, or like every now and again you get the occasional like, oh, why not? And the reason I actually don't drink, well, the reason it started off with anyway was because of the panic attacks I was having. I was already out of control in that context where I could not like have a say on what happened, and I was like, I don't want to be putting myself voluntarily into that position. That's how it started, and then it's just like, oh, I don't really care. I mean, I don't feel like I'm missing out.
Yeah.
But that's generally the reason I give people if they do ask, and they're like, oh yeah, okay. Anyway, next conversation. I definitely found it's very easy if you're with people that support and care about just you being there and being a friend. They're not going to care whether you're sober or not. But I do know some people do feel the pressure from their friends, especially if they are people who drink. If you do drink, they think you have to drink every time they drink. But in general, I've definitely found it easier here than.
And I like that because we have a lot of people that think if you don't drink you're going to be in trouble, but you don't have to drink. And as long as, I guess you said something before, as long as you know what your values are and why you're doing whatever you're doing, it's easy to say that, but in a situation where there's 20 people in front of you going, hey, you have to really be strong-willed and really know why you're doing whatever you're doing. But what I want to emphasize here is you can still go to university and still have a good time.
Yeah.
You still had a good time, but you chose not to drink. And
still made mistakes and did everything
and we'll make
normal
mistakes still.
will do.
Yeah.
I just wasn't drunk.
Yeah. Which is so you don't have an excuse, which is great.
Honestly, I don't have an excuse. But it was just a preference more than anything. And a lot of people just respect it, which is great. I was worried actually coming down about, because there's always like that stigma around all the universities, but kind of especially down here that everyone thinks it's a big party culture. Totally. I mean, I still went out to parties with friends and all that kind of stuff, but I still had fun and everyone was still happy I was there. I just wasn't drinking. And I mean, you can very easily not drink at university. I actually know quite a few people who have given up by now. In fourth year, they're like, I'm over it. It's expensive. I feel like death. Some people go very hard and then ease up. Some people just keep going. I mean, I feel like especially now, in this kind of new age kind of coming through, people are very respectful, I guess, of other people's choices. But it was a big fear of mine actually coming to university. I was like, oh shit, everyone else drinks. I'm going to be the only one who doesn't. And then I'm not going to go anywhere because everyone else is drinking. And definitely less pressure socially. I mean, you're always going to get people that are like, oh, come on, just like join in. But it's totally just up to preference.
Totally. And I think the key thing there for you is that you said you had a good time, you made the mistakes. It's not like you locked yourself in a room doing your homework, studying the whole time. You didn't do that. That you lived a life. You made mistakes. You got into trouble. You just did you're a young person. You're a young person doing whatever young people do.
It's part of growing up, honestly.
Yeah. And so your degree. So you finished up your degree, and what is the highlight for you in your degree? So you said second year was pretty challenging for the first semester. If you were to go, and especially you're doing your postgrad as well, is there something that you're like, man, this is such a eureka moment for me when you're doing your program?
Third year was definitely my best year. Socially, emotionally, grades wise, everything. It all came together for me in third year. That was also because thankfully we didn't have any more lockdowns, so we actually got to do our practicals and everything else for the first time pretty much. But my biggest thing that I'm proud of in third year, I mean, did some really cool practical lab stuff, did some really good essays, got really good grades, super happy with that. But the biggest thing for me was this project I was working on for 6 months. Was actually just for one of my undergrad papers. You just do a project for 6 months and some lab work, and then you do a presentation and an essay on it. But mine was completely left field, nothing to do with what I'm actually doing now. I decided to do mine on ectomycorrhizal fungi from Piano Flat over by Gore. So we had 48 dried samples of these mushrooms that my supervisor had collected because he's like a humongous fungi expert guy from the botany department. And we got to, me and my lab partner, so there was only 2 of us, and you're supposed to have 4 in a group, but no one else wanted to do mushrooms because they're like, that's boring when we could do beetles and plants and other stuff. So we had 48 samples that we had to DNA code and then run against the actual databases and stuff to find out what species they are and everything else. And we actually found that 5 of them had never been described genetically before. So technically there's 5 new species that we discovered in this random undergrad project that we did. Now that's currently getting written up by my supervisor and all that stuff, and we kind of just get put on the end as some authors. But I think that was really exciting to kind of actually, like, that's what my degree has been working towards this whole time. Like, this is the actual lab stuff we get to do, like the new scientific discoveries and stuff you get to make. And I mean, a lot of people are probably going to be like, you found new species of mushroom, that's okay, whatever. But I was super stoked with that. I mean, such a weird context, but I mean, actually using the science for what you kind of dreamed of as a kid. That was the moment where I was like, I've made the right decision. Like, I know I've questioned it a lot over the years, but that was the moment where it all kind of clicked together, and I was like, this is why I've done this. Like, it's possible, I think, was the biggest thing. Because I mean, I always dreamed about this kind of stuff happening, and I was like, yeah, but it's probably never going to happen. Like, it's just like part of, but when it actually, like, this is what you put in all the effort for. That was probably my biggest moment, I think. And then we got really good grades on top of that, so that was like just the icing on the cake. But that was the big eureka moment where I was like, this is what I've been putting all the work in for, like literally all the blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah, literally, exactly. How crazy though. 14-year-old Ashleigh Stanners. Hey, you enjoyed your biology says, hey, this is good for you. Second year Ashleigh Stanners, why am I doing this here? What am I here? Why am I here? Third year, boom, that one moment, isn't it what a crazy journey? And I think we're using, I mean, this is your story, but it's a story that a lot of young people and a lot of people in life go through. but a lot of people at the second year point will give up and
Yep.
go, it gets too hard and just give up and go, this is ridiculous. Why am I doing that? What is going on here? But you, in your story, you've carried on, plus everything else happening in your world. You get
Yeah.
the Eureka moment and then you go, boom. But the Eureka moment also said to you, hey, you didn't just finish your third year. You were like, oh, cool, I want to do more. So let's talk about that there. What's motivated you to do more? Because you doing a postgrad diploma certificate. I keep forgetting which one it is because they keep changing all the time. That's not your
Yeah.
fault. But also looking to do a master's as well. You know what? Because this is, because I'm thinking back about super anxious Ashleigh Stanners. Now, boom, in this place where you might have to go to conferences around the world where you will have to present your work and do your stuff, but also in a space that you really enjoy. What is the motivation for you to do your postgrad work?
So yeah, it's also a bit of a funny story. I wasn't meant to be doing this degree that I'm doing now.
Yes, we know that. Yeah, the two of us know that. Our listeners don't know that, but the two of us know that.
But
Do
yeah.
you want to explain? Do you want to explain what happened? So let's touch base a little bit. So earlier on, I spoke about your graduation, and for our listeners out there, I was there on graduation, and I just see Ashleigh running, in her looking all amazing in her gown, but she was not in the moment. She was not present in the moment. Zero,
Not
right?
at
Let's be honest,
all.
right?
I
Not at all.
was stressed.
Yeah,
I couldn't enjoy a lot of pre-graduation anyway.
yeah.
Literally up until the moment where I was about to walk across the stage, my mind was just completely occupied out somewhere else.
It 100% was. Yeah.
100%. Like I can tell even in the photos, like before graduation versus after. Like after, I'm so stoked and I'm just happy to be there. Beforehand, the lights are out behind my eyes. I'm somewhere. Which is actually quite sad looking back. But
But
so
that's because something happened to just change the moment for you, really.
Just like the day before. So long story short, I had actually applied to do my honours degree, got accepted into all that and stuff, and then we had issues with finding lab space for me to do my honours, and I found out on email pretty much the day before grad as I was driving back because I'd been hiking up in Mount Cook with my family for a couple of days, so no reception. Literally get straight back into reception. I have an email that says, hey, by the way, we don't have lab space for you. Can you email all the lecturers and see if they have any space at all? So I did all that, and that none of them had space, pretty much. I mean, it's December. The stuff's always sorted out like way in advance.
Yeah.
So I was scrambling the day before graduation pretty much to save my degree, and couldn't. And I was just freaking out. I was like, what am I going to do? I've already signed my flat for a year in Dunedin. Like, I can't get out of this. So much was just occupying my mind because I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I can do next year. Do I just have to work for a year and then try again? All that kind of stuff. And that was such unfortunate timing because I was already nervous about graduating. Because I had also moved my graduation to be the same day as my brother's because he got his honours. So it was a really important and very special day, not only for me but also because I got to see my brother graduate.
At the same time. Yeah.
I actually cried watching him cross the stage. But it was a really big moment for me, and I just struggled to be present, which was really upsetting up until the moment I was about to go across the stage. That's when it all kind of was like, you're here, you need to make the most of it. But that was a tough time. And then I was also picking up my entire flat and moving and all that kind of stuff. But also on the side, scrambling emails everywhere trying to figure out if I can do what I wanted to do. And it just didn't pan out that way, so I decided to take a postgraduate, I think it's a diploma, I don't know, it's a postgraduate degree,
something yeah. Something, yep.
And I was like, well, at least it's in the realm of genetics still, genomic health and medicine. And even that changed a couple times. I was supposed to do 2 papers a semester this year and finish at the end of the year, and then they were like, oh no, we can do 1 in first semester and then 3 in second semester, and then they were like, oh, actually, we're not going to teach 2 of them till next year, so you can do 1 per semester for 2 years. And I was just like, I don't know what's going on. It changed a lot, and it was already kind of a really big changing time in my life personally as well. So I was just like, I don't know what I'm doing. I was like, I've just done all this work and I've tried so hard, and I'd finally got to a point where I was happy with like my degree and everything. I was like, this is my calling, and then it all got flipped upside down again. And it feels like it's almost a story of my life in a way, but it's just everyone has that. There's always going to be things that come in completely out of nowhere, that are going to affect your plans. Nothing actually ever goes directly to plan. And now, looking back, it's a blessing. At the time, absolutely. So yeah, I'm doing that now, and I'm going to transfer the papers the papers I do this year, hopefully to my master's, that I've just applied for, up at Waikato. So hopefully they get back to me soon. Yeah, so I originally was just going to do that, and work and for a year, because you can't get a student loan with the amount of papers I'm doing. And that itself was also hard, learning that kind of work, study, life balance, especially down here in Dunedin, where there's a lot of students competing for not so many jobs.
Yeah.
And then somewhere along the way, about a month ago, it kind of just clicked in my brain where I was like, I could do a master. I have the grades for it. I can do a master's. I don't have to be at the same university I've been at for the last 4 years. Like, there are other options, and although it's scary going to a new place as a postgrad where you just don't know anyone or even the campus, but I just saw it as an opportunity to learn more, because like I've had the same sort of lecturers and teachers in a way for the last couple of years. I'm like, I'm only going to learn new techniques and skills and stuff somewhere else. But it is a big decision to make, because I've just made my life here for the last 4 years, like all my friends and sort of like my university found family in a way. Leaving that all behind to go somewhere else was a big decision as well. But thankfully, to the joys of the internet, you can keep in contact really easy. But yeah, I had not planned for any of this. I was like, I'm going to do my bachelor's, I'll probably do my honors, and then just go into working in a genetics field somewhere, and then maybe travel a bit. That was my plan, 9 months ago? And then I went from that to not knowing what I was doing, to picking up a random sort of degree that I didn't really want to do, but I mean, there was no other options, to now feeling good and knowing where I'm heading. Today, literally, like just before this.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been like talking to a bunch of supervisors and stuff, but I made the decision today. But I had absolutely none of this in mind. I didn't think I was ever going to do my master's. And I was like, if I'm going to do my master's, it'll probably be like 10 years time. I'll come back and do like master's or a PhD or something. But yeah, absolutely none of it was planned. And in that time period before everything kind of came back together again, really hard. It's really hard to not know what you're working towards, I think. Especially when you're doing, like, you are still studying and you're like, why? It's the whole second year pretty much all over again. It's like, why am I actually doing this? Like, what is it useful to me for? But all of that falling apart in December last year, although terrible at the time, has probably given me almost a better opportunity now.
Yep.
And that's something I always try to keep in mind when the shit hits the fan. Just, I know it sucks at the time, but usually it opens up another doorway or pathway to something, and you just don't know what it is. Which is really good, but also really scary.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's I love this because, at the start of this podcast, I spoke about, my intro was basically talking about things change in life and things are going to happen. And basically, as I said, we're going to find out about your story, and your story has basically said that, at each stage something has happened. All your plans, basically your best laid plans, have all changed along the way because of different things, um, which is life, which is life. But but it's hard to see it at that moment in time, And at this in December, you're like, my whole world is crumbling right now. In year 11, my whole world is crumbling right now. In first year, when COVID happened, my whole world is crumbling right now. At that point in time, those feelings are validated. They're real. They are real. But as you said, as you said many, many times, hindsight is the whole. If we all could live with that, it'd be amazing. But now you look back, all right, cool. It's all happened for a reason. But again, it also depends on the way you look at it, right? Some people will just crumble. Cool, this is it's all over. But so testament to you to go. Actually, I've looked at the positive. It's had to go through the valley to get to the hills, which is crazy. Yeah, Ashleigh, we've been talking for over an hour now, so I'm mindful of the time. And it's really, I mean, we can keep talking for a long, long time. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to round off the podcast, and because we can keep talking forever, I might get you back again when you're doing your masters, which is really exciting, really cool for you, really cool for you, because there's so much in your life as well that you do some really cool things as well. Our podcast is called Baskets of Knowledge, and we invite our guests, aka you, to share one piece of knowledge that they'd like to have our listeners and myself put into our basket of knowledge as we round off this podcast. And this could be anything from your personal life, from your study life, from anything that you think would be great from Ashleigh's life so far.
There's so many. It is completely valid to be feeling what you're feeling in the moment. When things are hard and it feels like everything is just falling apart. I really struggled with actually just accepting that I was upset about it, and it's okay to be upset or frustrated or scared. You don't need to fight those feelings. They might feel completely silly and insignificant, and you shouldn't be feeling like that, but it is valid to feel how you feel in the moment, because you don't know what's coming. I mean, better things could be coming and you just don't know, but if you don't let yourself feel it in the moment, it just goes back into that back pocket in your brain, and stays there until you accept kind of your emotions. So yeah, it's totally valid to feel however you feel, no matter how silly you think it might be, and to accept it, because I couldn't for a very long time.
That's beautiful. I think that's relevant to anybody. Your feelings are valid, but also to accept those feelings.
Yeah,
it's easy to go, oh, I'm validating my feelings, but I'm not accepting them. That's a whole different story altogether. And that's where things happen. Things go really wrong when you don't accept those feelings, especially when others say they're silly and you accept that as opposed to you accepting the feelings. That's beautiful. Ashleigh, it's been a really privilege to have you on here. I'm very lucky to have known you for a long time, and you're just a summary of your story. Year 11, when you thought, actually, you basically said you didn't even know you were going to finish a degree, and you have gone through so many things to get to where you're right now. When you've completed your degree, that's done and dusted. See you later. Thanks for coming. A person who was socially anxious to being head student, and being someone who takes people on tours around the campus and being out there in front of people, to actually come into the podcast, which is pretty hard for a lot of people to do. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much for jumping on. Any last words before we round off?
I think my last kind of thing would be, it's okay if your plans don't work out the way you thought they were going to. Things change, and quite often something better will show up than you could have ever anticipated, but it's a journey to get there. But yeah, just make plans, but just be conscious that not all your plans go exactly the way you think they're going to, and that's okay.
Yeah, that is fantastic. That is a beautiful way to end the podcast today. Once again, Ashleigh, thank you so much for jumping on. For our listeners out there, thank you for listening to us. For our regulars, you know who you are. Thank you for always jumping on. For our new listeners, please jump on, please comment, please share this with your network. It's the only way we grow. The purpose of this podcast is just to share experiences and to normalize what is happening in our lives. Until next time, don't forget to put something in your basket of knowledge as you move forward. Till next time, ka kite, bye everybody. Peace.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to Baskets of Knowledge.
Yeah, we hope that you found something useful to put into your basket of knowledge. And as we said before, remember to put something little into your baskets of knowledge every week. And as always, feel free to like, comment, and share this podcast. Thanks, everybody. Bye.